Welcome back to another episode of Auto Amateur. I'm James, and in this video, it's another one of my performance series for the 991.2. We're installing diverter valves. Let's go check it out. So what are diverter valves and why should you care? Well, this video is probably for people who have turbocharged engines. So if you're one of those guys out there with one of those nasty, okay, awesome, naturally aspirated 911s or other Porsches, this video probably isn't for you. But for those of you with the 991.2 generation like I have, when Porsche went to that generation, they converted all of their engines from naturally aspirated to turbocharged for a whole bunch of reasons, fuel efficiency, blah, blah, blah. But what we've got here with these turbocharged engines is an opportunity to crank more power out of them. So if you've been watching, you've seen that I've put a Softronic tune, a stage 1 tune on this car, and I've gone from around 375 horses to about the 480, 85, as I prove on a dyno at Minnesota Performance. Well, having also put on the Sports Cats from Sol Performance, as well as their valved exhaust, I am potentially cranking another 20, 25 horses out of this engine, which puts me to sort of GT3 levels, if you can believe it, around the 500 horses and around 510 foot-pounds of torque. Now, unfortunately, as you start to crank more and more power out of these cars, some of the plastic-made factory parts are at risk of failure. They're not necessarily going to, but in the case of the diverter valves, there is a risk that you're going to be actually getting slightly reduced levels of performance because of the leaks that can occur with these factory parts. So these diverter valves that I've sourced from Flat 6 Motorsports in Florida from John Swift and his team, they are going to make sure that I'm not losing any of that boost pressure that builds up, and then as the valves dump it back into the system, as I go from gear to gear or I come off the boost, my car is going to be performing optimally. So in this video, we're going to be doing the DIY install, and then afterwards, we're going to talk about some of the other performance mods that I've got coming up. But for now, let's get these valves on the car, and then we'll come back soon. Let's go. For this job, we're going one step further than just removing the bumper cover because we need access to these hoses connected to the air box so that they can come away when we take out the intercoolers. Moving on to the intercoolers, the diverter valve that I'm going to be replacing is directly on the other side of this intercooler. Now, in order to take this off, these two hoses here are going to come off with this entire unit. There are a number of fasteners and screws here that I'm going to be taking off in order to get it off the frame. And then on the inside here, I'm going to disconnect this hose and disconnect this hose, and they come off with the intercooler. If I go one step further and I do the spark plugs, I'm going to also disconnect this clamp here so I can pull off this hose and have direct access there into the spark plugs. And with the intercooler off and with this off, it's a really great opportunity to do spark plugs. So that's going to be another job before the bumper goes back on. One last thing, if you see what looks like a small VHS tape or like a hard drive, some electrical components sat here, if you do this job connected by these three screws, it means that you've got the PDCC, which is the Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control, and it's a yaw sensor, and you've got one on this side and one on the other side. So you would need to take out those three screws, pop off the electrical connector and take out that yaw sensor before you then disconnect this frame. But this is relatively straightforward. A couple of hose clamps, a couple of fasteners, and hopefully this should come off. All right, here's the car without the intercoolers. Wow, it's pretty weird to see the whole kind of back quarter of the car just off. Just one couple of points to note. There were two additional screws here, T20s, keeping the heat shielding onto the bottom of the intercooler housing. That needs to come off. And then these hoses here, you can see that they don't make it easy for them to come off. It just requires, a bit of gentle but firm tugging. And I was twisting them to left and to right, and eventually they came off. But it kind of felt like the whole thing was being stuck on there and I was missing a fastener, when actually it was just the two hoses here holding things together. And you can see here, these are the hoses in question, there, with the two fasteners around them. In fact, this fastener is still up here. Let's make sure I don't forget that later. Put that around here. Okay, now the diverter valve itself, you can see, is right here. And the factory ones here are plastic. There's a vacuum line that just pulls off the top. I've got a clamp here and I've got a clamp here, and hopefully everything should just come out. And then I put the new factory valve in and we're good to go. All right, here are the flat six Motorsports diverter valves, metal, machined. They look like they'll last forever. Two of them in the box, available on their website. And then they are essentially going to replace over here these plastic guys. take a quick little look at this. These clips here were easy to remove with just these pair of pliers, and the hoses were pretty easy to come off. This was a little challenging getting back in. I had to use a trim tool. In the DIY videos I've seen online, they just pop back in, and it really isn't the case. So I lined up one side and made sure that the edges were sort of clinging onto the lip here, and then just sort of worked my way around with the trim tool to push it all in. It's about as far in as I think it's going to go. And then the blow line here, I have been trying to get this on more than halfway. There is space there to get it further on, but now it won't come off, and I can't get it any further on, so I'm hoping that's enough. But that's it, relatively straightforward, not quite as plug and play as I was expecting, just because, like I say, this was really difficult to get off in the first place and then put back on, and that was pretty challenging. But I'm really happy with the results, and I can't wait to get them back on the car and see what the performance is going to be like now. So I'm here putting the intercooler back on the side of the car, and I've just put a couple of fasteners on the outside to keep it in place. I need to get the hoses connected. This lower hose here is connected very easily. This one here, this plastic hose, is taking a while to actually fit together, and I don't have a lot of leverage. So what I'm going to do is take off this bracket at the bottom so I can loosen this pipe. I'm going to wiggle it into place and then reattach it on the bottom. Well guys, thanks again for checking in for another video. Now at the beginning, I talked about some of the other mods that are coming up. I have an IPD plenum that's going in. I've got headers from Soul Performance that are going to be going on. I'm going to be mixing up the headers and the sport cats and the exhaust components with the factory PSC, as I have been doing with the mufflers. So I've got a few more exhaust videos coming. I've got the plenum video coming. I've got some other stuff in the interior, like dash cam and that sort of stuff. But I'm now thinking about what other performance mods I can do. Now, going back to Flat Six Motorsports in Florida, they actually have a set of packaged performance upgrades for the 991.2, which I've been looking at, which is super exciting. Essentially going through the numbers from 2 to 3 to 4, I think their stage 4 tune, as advertised, can put out around 650 or 700 horses from this base Carrera. Upgraded intercoolers and a few other gizmos that'll go into the package. So as the months come along, I'm thinking about getting even more power out of this car. I hope you'll stay tuned. Thanks again for checking in. And as ever, I appreciate all the comments and all the banter that comes with them. Check me out on Instagram. Tell your friends and family about Auto Amateur on YouTube. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next video, which is going to be Soul Performance, Sports Cats, and Valved Muffler. Let's go! See you soon. Bye.